Hey everyone, Wesley Negron here reporting for Ghost Cult Magazine, and I'm excited to be with one of the most influential bass players in the modern times with resume that includes playing along people like Steve Vai, Joseph Trani, Def Clock, among many other great musicians. And now with the band Aristocrats, I'd like to welcome Bryan Beller. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I don't know about this guy. He seems a little upset, but hopefully he'll calm down. So
It's he doesn't represent what I'm actually living here because it's really warm here. So the whole
yeah,
freeze is not as relatable as I'm not sure. Where are you? Is it cold where you are right now?
no. I live outside Los Angeles in a
Okay.
kind of north of the city, but the whole freeze aspect is kind of a double entendre. It's the title of our new live album, Freeze Live in Europe 2020. But of course, it's a freeze. Everybody had to stop wherever they were, when we were on tour and go home. And I just remember being in Europe and I saw, there was a few bands that were over there at the same time as we were. I remember Testament was like right behind us or in front of us in Italy. And I remember seeing Between the Buried and Me in South America, and just one band after the other, just kind of making the posts like, oh, sorry, but looks like our tour's over and da, da, da. We were really lucky. We finished our tour. Our tour ended on March 6, 2020. We had 6 weeks before the Christmas holiday in 2019, and then another 6 weeks is all Europe after the holiday. And it went from mid-January to March 6th. And then we went home, and then, of course, we all know what happened after that. But we recorded all the shows, and we didn't know what we were going to do with them. It was like, well, why not? We've got the technology, let's just do it. And then after a while, we decided, let's check this out and see, see what we've got and see if there's something that we feel like is worth like really sharing with the fans. And because, live, what we do live is live, it's like we're such a live band. You can't ever really recreate the thing that happened, when you're standing in the room watching it live. But we do do little different spins on the songs every night. So there's always something unique that happens in every show. And so we found a couple of really good shows and we put this together, and it's mostly new stuff. And we're just excited to share it with everybody.
Awesome. And that's something that I've always been very curious about you guys. Like, do you actually plan the whole jamming? Because you guys are like having conversation between each other as you are jamming and like having fun with it. And you see it in your faces as you like play along and see where, Marco doing these things, and then you move along and then go through doing the same thing. Is this planned? Is this something you guys talk about while rehearsing for this shows? Or is it something that you guys already know each other already so well that
it's a combination of all of those things. First of all, yes, we know each other. So we know each other's little tricks and tendencies. And we know when someone starts doing a little thing, kind of what flavor it's going to be. And we can kind of, it's a lot easier to communicate in that way than it was 10 years ago when we were doing our first shows, of course. As far as the moments in the show, we're not a free-form jazz band. It's not just like, let's go up there and see what happens. There are songs, there's form. We're a rock band, we're rock fusion, not jazz fusion, right? But there are moments, in sections that we know that, it's like, okay, we're going to get here and let's just see, And sure, of course, when you go and get into like the 60th, 70th, 80th show of a tour, some patterns will happen. And then the challenge is to do the things that work, that the crowd reacts to and makes it a better show without doing the same thing in the improv sections or same flavor every night. And one of the things I like about the shows that we found that were all in Spain, by the way, for this album, is that every one of these versions of these songs where there was an opportunity to do something different than was going on, even inside that time period, even inside that block of 10 or 15 shows where you get into kind of a touring groove, these performances were still special inside that context. So it was fun to go back and find them and be like, oh, that was cool. It's not like the other shows weren't good. It was just that some of them were, some nights you just do the thing that works. Maybe it doesn't sound great on stage, so you want to make sure you just deliver the goods. And then some nights you go for things and they don't quite work, but that's part of what like live performance is all about. I wouldn't necessarily put that one on a live album, right? So, you find the stuff that you think is the best. Frank Zappa used to do the same thing. He would record everything. Just endless hours, reels of tapes and all the stuff that he had, just to kind of, find the one live performance that was like, well, not only was everything played right, but there was a little bit of fun. This unexpected thing happened, and there was just a vibe about this one. It's like, yep, I want to put that one on You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore, Volume 4. So that's, we're not Frank Zappa, but we try and honor his spirit and trying to find something fun and cool while all the notes are flying by.
And something very interesting about your live shows as well is the fact that you actually, take into consideration that you guys are like instrumental band. The crowd is actually into it, and you guys make them be into it as well, listening to them like screaming to different parts. And again, I think it's this whole charisma of you guys like interacting within each other, knowing what you're doing, like playing with each other a little bit. It's very interesting as well.
Well, thank you. I mean, we actually it ends up being kind of like we're workshopping it. I mean, like, because the presentation of what we do, we're conscious of the fact that we're an instrumental band, and there's nothing wrong with an instrumental band getting up there and just playing the music. I mean, like, there's so many great musicians out there, right? Of course, it's going to be a good show. We just decided early on that we wanted to be a little bit different. We wanted to talk on the microphone, have a little fun, tell jokes and stories and stuff like that. Right. And we had all had experience leading our own clinics. And I think a lot of that skill set comes from being the one guy who has to kind of fill the room, control the room and the vibe and everything like that, and make sure that it's like, entertaining and engaging, not just, here's my playing and here's the product, right? Right. So we get into that. Now, what's interesting is like the people who see the first 10 shows of the tour will see us workshopping this stuff. And it's almost, some of it's almost like a stand-up comedian, like workshopping stuff. You go to one place and you tell a version of a story, and this works, and then you tell this part, and like you get no audience reaction at all. And you think to yourself, all right, well, I'm dropping that. Not going to do that in the next show. And then, of course, musically, there's a version of that happens instinctively because we're musicians. But I think even more interestingly is the talking bits, where we're actively, subconsciously, we don't even really talk about it all that much amongst ourselves. We're doing something. It's something works, it's great. And the next night, it's there. And then the next night, if for some reason something didn't work, then when someone's telling a story about a song or something like that, that's not there the next night. And after 20 shows, you have a pretty good idea of how that stuff all works, because we want the crowd to have fun, and we want them to be engaged in a way that they're not really, or not always engaged in an instrumental music show where they're screaming stuff, or we're talking, they're laughing and everything like that. But that it's, the fun takes some work, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, it does. It does. You have to like build it up, and obviously, again, taking into consideration the model that you guys are doing your shows have to be this way. It's fantastic to like. It would be very interesting to see you guys go through the whole process, like see the first few shows, see the middle shows, and then the end of the tour.
Yeah. I mean, I sometimes when I go back and listen to the shows, if there are recordings of shows from the very beginning of the tour, I'll go, oh, because you just hear us trying to figure stuff out. But of course, that's when the magic happens. That's when the one thing will happen where we all look at each other and go, that was really cool. Let's remember that. And then it becomes a thing. Becomes a little motif that we play with for the rest of the tour. So, those moments only happen for the first time once. So there's an argument for seeing an early show. And then maybe, later on in the tour, you're going to see something that's like just an absolute machine, that's, even though there's improv bits and we all get to do something different every night, we know how the show really works, and we just go out there and just deliver it. So, and you could talk to bands. Every band goes through a version of this when they're on a tour of like 100 shows. It's the show develops over time. And we're fortunate enough to have material that allows that for room to breathe. Not a metal show might not have that same thing. There may be tiny little differences in the way that people, lay into things and interpret things and get the crowd to go. But, those songs are set. They're through composed, and it is what it is. And that's cool. I love metal. And I did a couple metal tours with Death Clock, and it still felt great every night, even though it was pretty much the same performance every night. So this is different, and we try and find the things that work.
It also helps you develop in your instrument in some kind of way. I think you get to know your instrument even more when you have to like, okay, tonight I have to perform something new, or just seeing how Marco or Guthrie are doing this thing. So how can I just move along with this and just, develop I'm a bass player myself, so
Well,
I play in a progressive metal band where
okay.
I also, we have this jamming sessions, and I get to know my bandmates, and I get to know my instrument a little bit better with this kind of sessions as well.
Well, you learn something from everybody that you play with. That's just the
Yeah.
nature of musical interaction. But I can tell you from firsthand experience that the best the best practice regimen I ever had in my entire life was joining a band with Guthrie Govan and Marco Miniman in it. I mean, it's just like, and it's funny, I've kind of told this story before, but I didn't necessarily train for this.
Yeah,
Like, I didn't like go to Berkeley College of Music. You went to Berkeley too, right?
I did. I did.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I didn't go to Berkeley to become like the next Billy Sheehan or Victor Wooten. Like that wasn't what I
Right.
was up for. I just wanted to be a good bass player playing some interesting music in a band. I barely worked on extended technique, and it just wasn't a particular focus of mine. And some of it was I was just lazy. Like I just didn't push as hard as I could have because I was interested in other things, and I just wasn't one of those practice 8 hours a day guys. And my reward for that is being in a band with Marco and Guthrie. I mean, it started when I joined Dweezil Zappa's band, and from that point, that was my first gig when I was 22. You're kind of in that alley of the people who play. Oh, these guys, they must be technically really, really great. Truth is, I was kind of technically average, but suddenly I had to really ramp it up and really kind of get my shit together, be able to be able to keep up with the people that I was suddenly then playing with. And that's been kind of the story of my whole professional life. So I suppose it's only fitting that at some point that I would just, hit the karma jackpot and join the Aristocrats.
Right. I feel the same way where, I believe that the musicians that surround me are like the most talented people that I can play with. And then I just have to keep up with them. And,
Yeah.
It's a challenge.
I've learned a tremendous amount about rhythms and more complicated displacements and metric modulations. I mean, like I've played with a lot of great drummers. Joe Travers is an unbelievable drummer I've played with forever. But Marco really, really pushes the limits. And, and now I know Marco's thing, but I mean, like in the beginning, it was just like, oh my God, what's going on? And yeah. Guthrie's brain is so quick, for harmonic changes and little asides and humorous little, moments. Yeah. I don't think I've ever met someone on a fretted instrument with a quicker mind to hand to sound communication than Guthrie. So, and there's a reason why I'm a bass player. My job, I feel like, is just to, keep a kind of steady anchor so that the kites can fly like this and we can all move as one.
And I think particularly in this live, I think, and something that really got my attention now that we're talking about bass, the tone, I would like to have a little bit of a gear rundown of what you used during this lives, because you vary from like the crunchiest, heaviest tone to like the most, chorus, low end, gassy kind of tone. So how do you get to do that in one show and have that, whole big gamut or spectrum of tones?
Well, the interesting part is as disinterested as I had intermittently been about technique throughout my playing career, tone was something I was always obsessed with. Like I would go to practice, rent rehearsal rooms, big ones, and just bring my whole rig in there and just be in there all day, just trying out different basses, different pickup settings, different pedals, different amplifiers, especially overdrive pedals. I'm so OCD about that. So that is something that I actually really, really have worked on. And so the idea that when I know that I'm going to go for like a distorted kind of or driven crunchy tone, say for example, if it's an Aristocrat, someone familiar with the catalog, like the tone on Oh No, I know it's a bass. I want it to be an ash body, maple neck, maple fingerboard, with kind of vintagey jazz pickups. I'm going to attack with my fingers because I'm not really much of a pick player. And I'm going to use the Exotic Effect BB bass preamp for my main overdrive. And it's going to go into a clean preamp. And then that clean preamp is going to, I want that clean preamp to be like, I don't want it to be like clean, warm tube and slow. I want it to be clean and fast response. And then I want the biggest possible solid state power amp I can get my hands on, and as many speakers as they'll let me bring onto the stage. Not so that I can play at 200 decibels, but so that I have so much headroom that I can just barely touch the string, and I can control the amount of velocity and attack and punch through the speakers. The little bit of an attack where you play the bass string and it kind of almost feels like a little kick drum, that little instant attack. All of those things are things that I've kind of worked out so that I know that when I'm going for a crunchy tone, it's that. And, tone woods matter on your instruments. Ash is bright, alder is darker. Maple fingerboard is bright, rosewood fingerboard is darker. Active versus passive, modern versus classic. Like my Mike Lowell instruments, my active jazz, the red one. That's a bright, it can be a clean jazz bass in like the way that you slap clean and play clean, but it's always bright, and it can really crunch out if you want. Then I've got these are my three main instruments that I used on the Aristocrats tour. Then I've got a Mike Lowell passive PJ, front pickup is a P pickup, split, back pickup is a J pickup, alder body, rosewood fingerboard, and I take the tone knob and I roll it almost all the way down. And so that's the kind of sound that I would use for like Get It Like That. You've heard it on recordings like It's on Bad Asteroid, and Gaping Head Wound and Louisville Stomp, really dark, smooth, kind of chocolatey sound.
Right.
And then there's a third sound that I go for, which is kind of like a modern compressy kind of focused sound, which is, Mike Lowell instruments are essentially super souped up Fender style instruments, 5 strings. But there's a whole other world of modern instruments out there. And I think that the Spectre is a great emblematic version of modern instruments, without going into what I call the coffee table basses, because I have nothing against those. I played alembics when I was in college and I have a Tobias still. And, I like the Ken Smiths and all those things. But the Spectre has kind of a really cool, weird thing that I first heard it and paid attention to it from Dan Briggs of Between the Buried and Me.
Yeah.
Where like his sound is so clean, but it just cuts right through this really dense metal mix and you can hear every single thing that he's doing. And I noticed it with Alex Webster and Cannibal Corpse as well. So I was like, well, what are they playing? Well, they're playing Spectres. So I got a couple of Spectres and I love the way they sound. And I use them for recordings. But I found out over the course of a few years that they're just not as comfortable for me as the Mike Lowell basses. So what I did was I had a Mike Lowell version. The Spectres are neck throughs. Now I'm getting super into nerdy shit here. The Spectres are neck through basses. There's one piece. The Mike Lowells are bolt-ons. The neck literally bolts on to the rest of the body. And that has tonal implications. But I had a Mike Lowell version of this kind of Spectre world of tone, and specifically the electronics that were in the Alex Webster signature Spectre, which was a set of EMG 40 DC pickups and the EMG BQC active preamp. And that with an alder body with a maple top and an ebony fingerboard, all those elements together have this really cool kind of, there's a slight sizzle on the top end, but it's not like the bright jazz bass. There's a low end, but it's not like smooth and dark and like vintagey low end. And then there's this mid-range character, which just has a way of kind of blossoming inside the note. And you hear that sound on the new album. I use that on When We All Come Together. And I believe I use it on Burial at Sea as well. It's a really a gorgeous sound. And then I ended up using that instrument when I played live for all sorts of stuff. I used it for Spanish Eddie as well. That's where you hear that sound.
Nice.
So and that's a Mike Lowell BB-MF5. It's a signature model, the Brian Beller Modern Focus 5. And so those three instruments, the bright jazz bass, the dark PJ, and the mid-range modern BB-MF5, between those three instruments, I cover a lot of ground. And then you get into the pedals, and you just got to test the pedals. And with pedals, and I'll just say this quickly because I'm going on too long already, just make sure you test the pedals against loud live music. If they sound great while you play them by yourself, okay, cool. You don't know what they're really going to do until you play to either with a live band, or what I like to do is I go into a big sound studio and I'll crank up tracks like painfully loud, coming back at me in the wedges, and then I'll try my effects. And that's when I know whether or not an overdrive is going to cut and the low end is still going to be there, whether or not a chorus is going to work, or whether or not a modulator or a wah or a synth or whatever is going to work. And that's the key to everything, is how does it sit in a live mix?
Those are very interesting takes. I definitely I'm actually making some notes here because I need to go ahead and practice that way and make sure that, my signal is actually working the way I want it to. There's a couple of things that you said that really are very interesting. First of all, I think Spectre is a great brand. I've used a couple of Spectres for recording as well. And they just released a Nenes Pulse series, 2 gorgeous spaces that I'm dying to test. Something else, how many, for example, for a tour like in Europe, how many bases do you actually take with you?
I bring 3 if it's Europe, because we're going to be on the ground for a long time.
Right.
That's the thing. Now, if it's fly dates in South America or Asia, or even inside Europe, every once in a while, there's a fly date where the ground crew will catch up to us after the fly date. Then I'll just bring 2.
Okay, and then you move from there, and then obviously you have a very big understanding.
Well, I mean, the specificity that I bring to tonal choices is a blessing and a curse. It's I care about it so deeply, and it's a part of my artistry. So whenever I don't have everything at my disposal, it's kind of like, well, okay, but you still got to play a show. You don't want to be a spoiled brat about it.
Yeah. Awesome. And something else I wanted to get into, you have the track Get It Like That, which was dedicated to Peart, which obviously unfortunately passed away in early 2020, and includes a very interesting YYC tribute. Can you tell us a little bit about the idea behind that? Did you plan that because, were you on tour when this happened?
No, I think Neil passed in the Christmas break in between our 2 European legs, if I recall correctly. Okay. It was very, very early 2020 or very late 2019. I don't remember specifically, but I remember that when we got together for the second leg in January, that it had already happened. And Marco and I were big Rush fans when we were growing up. Guthrie, not as much. And there's all sorts of things in the band where there's certain things that Guthrie and Marco are into that I'm not as much. There's things that me and Guthrie are into that Marco's not as much. So that dynamic plays out repeatedly. But in the case of Rush, it was something that Marco and I had where we were affected pretty deeply. And he started throwing in Neil Peart quotes in his drum solo, and then of course the crowd reacted really well. And so we decided to make it a thing. And he started doing a little section of his drum solo as some of the classic Rush stuff. And this is going to, it's exciting at the same time, we're people our age, I'm almost 50. Our idols, if they're 20 years older than us or 30 years older than us, they're not going to be around much longer. So we're going to see this over and over and over again now. And it's going to be weird, it's going to be weird and traumatic, just like these things always are. But that's how it goes.
Particularly I don't know if you ever got to meet him, but if you get to meet this people and this, idols of ours, and then they pass away, it's like, it touches you as a fan and as a musician as well, and then, if you have the opportunity to give them a little bit of tribute, why not? And I heard it, and it was very, very, because I was listening to the live, and then I heard the passages, I heard the What We See, and I heard the Tom Sawyer, and I was like, huh. And then when I looked at the name of the track, Neil Peart tribute, I was like, okay, makes sense.
Marco knows Alex fairly well, so, and they've collaborated, so there's a relationship there. We would never have just put it on the record if we didn't have their okay. You know what I mean? Because that would be weird. Especially dedicating the track and everything like that. But Alex, was like, hey, it's totally cool. And so it was all good.
Awesome. All right, Bryan. Well, we're almost in the end here, and I want to thank you for this. Freeze Live in Europe 2020 is coming out in May 7th. Anything else you want to tell the fans?
I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. It's kind of hard, right? Because I want to say, yes, there's going to be this tour then, and we're going to go here, we're going to go there. But the truth is, we don't know. We don't know. I mean, I know the Joe Satriani tour that was scheduled for Europe in spring 2021, which was originally scheduled for spring 2020. I mean, right after the Aristocrats tour was done on March 6th, I was supposed to have 3 weeks off, and then we were going to start a Joe Satriani world tour in Europe, 8 weeks, then South America in the summer, and then North America in the fall, and then Asia in early 2021, which that would have all just finished now. That's what was supposed to happen. obviously it all got wiped out. So Joe Satriani immediately rescheduled his tour from spring 2020 to spring 2021, like pretty early on, like in, I think it was May of last year. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, this Satriani team, they really got their shit together, man. They got the whole thing was rebooked, and I'm like, spring 2021, of course we're going to be able to do that. I mean, it just got rescheduled to 2022 with all the dates booked, right? Mm-hmm. So we'll see. There's a few other things I can't mention because for various reasons, because you don't know whether or not they're really going to happen from a live standpoint. But I've also been working on this project with a TV film scorer named Bear McCreary, who he scored The Walking Dead and Snowpiercer, and he did Battlestar Galactica. He's got a little empire going on several shows, and he also scored the last Godzilla movie, King of the Monsters.
Awesome.
And so he decided that he's got this new project that he wanted to put together, and that's all I could say about it. But there's a lot of really cool people who are on it. I'm glad that I'm on it, and there'll be more to say about that soon. And there's more Satriani stuff that's coming out that I'll be able to talk about soon, and blah 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 blah. But we're all just we're doing what we can. I mean, I'm doing a lot of recordings at home, which is great. My home studio chops are, like every musician who's a touring musician, we're all doing a lot of recordings at home, and a lot of people who, wouldn't normally be able to kind of peg us down because we're always on the move. Suddenly we're here. And so we can record people's albums, and that works out great. And we can work on stuff like this with the Aristocrats. And there's another Aristocrats project in the background that I can't talk about specifically, but another recorded release that will be, have news on soon, and all the rest. So there's stuff going on. But for right now,
yes,
this guy, right? So we're all still here. It's almost over. I feel like it's almost over, but you just never know.
So.
Yeah,
we hope so. So May 7th is going to be available everywhere. So, and also I'm pretty sure that everyone can, check on you guys on the socials.
Well, yeah, Aristocrat socials where, God, I can barely remember them all. I can't remember whether we're the Aristocrats band or Aristocrats band or the Aristocrats on Facebook. I think we're Aristocrats band. And Instagram, we're the Aristocrats band. If you search Aristocrats and it comes up and it doesn't look like us, then it's not us. What can I say? There's a lot. The Aristocrats is a good band name. There's a lot of them out there. We live and let live as far as we're concerned. And then there's the movie The Aristocrats, which has its own other thing. And then there's the Aristocats, which we get as well. So, we're out there. But yes, and also, our Bandcamp page, that's what I would tell people to go to. If you because that's where the streaming preview of Spanish Eddie is. If you go to the pre-order, if you pre-order the album, you get an instant download of Spanish Eddie immediately. So that's all fun, right? Right?
For sure. And I'm pretty sure that all the links are going to be in the description.
I'm pretty sure that all the links are going to be in the description, wherever that is. Just don't piss this guy off.
Right. Awesome, Bryan. Well, it was a pleasure talking to you and getting to meet you. I honestly, I've been a huge fan for a long time. So it's definitely been a pleasure. And again, the Aristocrats Freeze live in Europe 2020 out on May 7th. This was Wesley Negron for Ghost Cult Magazine. Be safe. Thank you, Bryan.
Thanks, man.